In this video, we're going to be looking at what's meant by industry policy and how that's different from budgetary supply side policies. So I'm going to go through each of these individually, and we'll also have a look at them in class. But basically, we've got budgetary supply side policies, which is looking at policies within the budget that can help to boost supply side potential. We talked about some of those within the last video. We have industry policies, which is basically referring to types of assistance that's given to industries to help them to grow in the long term. We'll talk about that a little bit more in this video. We have microeconomic reform policies, which is about trying to make businesses more efficient and more productive and setting up businesses so they can become more productive in the long term. And then we have examples of structural reforms and structural change. These aren't examples of government supply side policies. The other three are. They're examples of just businesses restructuring themselves to try and improve productivity and efficiency going forward. So we'll talk about each of these individually throughout the next couple of videos. So first of all, industry policy. Industry policy can be delivered through the budget, and it's basically trying to promote or develop local industries. In the past, industry policy was pretty simplistic in the sense that it was just about giving subsidies and providing protection for specific industries that potentially didn't have comparative advantage. So the idea is that we would protect special industries, like we would give subsidies to car industries, we'd have tariffs on textiles so that we could support industries in Australia, and the idea of that was to try and promote employment and keep jobs within Australia. So industries that used to be targeted for industry assistance were things like textiles, clothing, footwear and motor vehicle industries. These are industries where we suffered generally because of high labour costs and industries where we didn't really have a comparative advantage. So that was the focus of industry policy in the past. It was about targeting particular industries in need that potentially were at threat from imports and protecting them and providing assistance to them to keep jobs in Australia. Industry policy has changed a lot. So what happened with the problem with that way of going about things is that a lot of industries were very reliant on government support because they were getting subsidies, they didn't need to be as efficient. Because there were big tariffs, they didn't need to keep their costs down by as much. So that was leading to higher prices in Australia. It was leading to reduced efficiency. And businesses weren't sort of restructuring as quickly as they should have been to try and promote international competitiveness. So rather than trying to find new and be adaptive to new approaches and being dynamically efficient, businesses were being very inefficient and keeping higher cost structures. We had high minimum wages, and that was basically forcing the government to provide more and more assistance to these industries. So that was basically the way they used industry policy in the 70s, providing specific assistance for industries that were struggling or that didn't have comparative advantage in particular industries. The problem with that is that it created net costs for the economy as a whole because those industries became reliant on government support and became inefficient and prices continued to skyrocket. So industry policy in the past has been all about providing tariffs and subsidies to industries that potentially didn't have comparative advantage. Now industry policies have shifted and they're very reluctant to just do this. They're very reluctant to give subsidies just because a business is inefficient or because they're under threat from cheap imports. It's kind of like the government has applied a more of a bad luck approach to those kind of industries. If they don't have comparative advantage, then they are basically going to struggle and they could go out of business. And that's what's happened with the car and textiles industry in Australia. A lot of job losses in footwear as well because the government's not providing that industry assistance anymore. What they're doing now is industry policy is now targeting industries where there are clear signs that protecting these industries will have longer term benefits for society. So for example, they will act to prevent market failures. So if there's not enough resources being devoted to certain industries, then they will help prop up those industries by providing subsidies. They'll also encourage, so that can be an example of like providing research and development, investment into renewable energy sources to provide, so we're putting our funds into that, which will help protect our environment going forward. Helping farmers in need when they have like droughts. So that's basically the idea of that, is to making sure that our farms are remaining viable because they see those as important industries for our overall living standards. And that's partly to do with the fact that we want to keep, I suppose, farming in Australia. We want to make sure that we are benefiting from that and that we're not sort of subjective to any sort of diseases or that could come about from importing a lot of these products. So they will provide support for investment in research and development into renewable energy sources or any areas where they see clear positive externalities for society, they will still provide assistance to. So they'll provide assistance to farmers because they believe that they provide positive externalities for the country in terms of our national identity and what it basically means to be Australia, and that it's best for our economy as a whole if those industries are thriving. They will also provide export development grants for businesses that to help them penetrate world markets. So they will provide grants for like marketing and development if they see viable avenues for our export industries. So they won't protect industries that aren't efficient or that don't have comparative advantage, but they will still provide assistance where it's going to generate positive externalities, or they will help our exporters to help penetrate world markets in the sense that that's going to have positive benefits for society, positive benefits for Australia going forward. Thank you.